right. Well, in the interest of time, and I know there's a lot of content to cover today, I think we will go ahead and get started. So, first of all, welcome to all of you to the U.S. Africa Research Collaboration and DoD Funding Opportunities webinar. My name is Daniel Plock. I am a program officer at the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and we are pleased to welcome our colleagues from across the three branches of the DoD to discuss their funding opportunities and collaboration and the work that they're doing, not just in the US, but with colleagues and researchers in Africa as well, and how they support this work, as well as collaborations between researchers in the US and in Africa. Most of you are here today because of your interest in the U.S. Africa Frontiers program, either as applicants or attendees or alumni. And so we welcome you and look forward to giving this opportunity to our colleagues who can really support the important and integral work that you are doing in your respective institutions. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague from DoD who will be moderating, Lola Fatumbi. Lola?
Yes. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. Today, we have a lot planned for you all in helping you all understand opportunities to engage with basic research across DoD. First up, we're going to have the Director of Social Science in the Basic Research will give a talk about a general overview of basic research across all of the services and across all of DoD. Then we're going to have some program officers that are going to talk to you all about the different tri-services, that's Army, Navy, and Air Force. Then we also have some previous awarded DoD funded researchers that's also going to have some panel discussions. So there'll be plenty of room for you to ask questions. If you have a question while any of the panelists are talking, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll come back to it later. So without me taking any other time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. David Montgomery, who's going to first give us an overview of opportunities to engage with basic research within the U.S. Department of Defense.
Hello, Lola. Can you hear me? Can people hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wow, fantastic. It was harder to do than expected. Apologies for not being on screen. I'm in the office and there's the camera and audio is not working, so I'm calling it through the phone. But I wish everyone, I guess we're in different time zones, so I hope everyone is having a good day regardless of where it is. As Lola mentioned, I'm David Montgomery, and I direct social science for the Department of Defense. And on behalf of the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering, it's an honor to be here. There were a number of us here who have been involved in these collaborations and are keen to contribute as we can. Beyond bringing together a group of folks from Africa and the U.S. to establish research collaborations and using this platform as a way to sort of strengthen those, I want to recognize the African scientists who've already contributed a lot to DoD and the U.S. research enterprise, and as well the African-born scientists who've been instrumental in bringing this group together today. I'd also like to thank the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and other colleagues at DoD for their leadership and working with the academies and co-funders and organizers. Lola, if you can go to the next slide, please. What I want to do mostly today is really give a very quick overview of the way we think about fundamental research, basic research within the Department of Defense, and I will try to keep my comments brief because more folks will be talking later today. We'll talk about a little bit, as Lola mentioned, about sort of the philosophy, the international science contribution, and a vision for the future of collaborating with DoD and African research partnerships, and then we'll have some conversations from the various program officers. Next slide is fine, Lola. I think one way that's helpful to sort of think about what we're talking about when we mention basic research is past year's quadrant, which is something that we talk about a lot. It comes from a 1997 book by Donald Stokes, where he was trying to sort of identify different types of scientific approaches to different questions. Some that are very applied in their focus, which we see at the bottom right, sort of they're referred to as the Edison quadrant. And then you also see in the top two types of basic fundamental research. One, which is pure basic research, sort of knowledge generation, and then on the top right, what's referred to as past year's quadrant, which is a combination of sort of both need for basic knowledge generation, but focused on a particular problem or problem set. And DoD within the basic research enterprise really thinks about the top two, both the pure core quadrant and the use-inspired past years quadrant. And I mean, really what we're trying to do is try to both develop sorts of knowledge that can advance science and also to advance it in a way that might have sort of unexpected implications and consequences for improving our ability to address particular problems. The past years quadrant comes from Louis Pasteur, and sort of his work around trying to understand understanding the biology of disease and germ theory, which had important implications for all sorts of things. Next slide, Lola. All right, so here's just a very brief overview of the DoD Basic Research Office. Where, and it's a broad office. I won't go into all the details around these, but we sort of deal with research policy. We deal with sort of developing young scholars or young researchers in science, technology, engineering, and math. We try to strengthen capacity of different folks engaging and working with DoD. We do administer a few technical and international programs, ranging from the social science programs, which I direct, to the more technical physics, engineering, life science focus, as well as international collaborations, and then projects trying to look at the future directions in particular disciplinary areas. And we also have a role in general oversight for basic research. Next slide. All right. As a sort of a representation of the budget across the Department of Defense, you'll see that there are a number of different agencies broken down. USD, the Department of Defense, is the largest funder for international research, around $1.4 billion annually. And you'll see that different components of that break up different parts. So the Navy, roughly 25%, the Air Force and Army also in the 20%. And there'll be representatives later talking about that. Next slide. And then as a funder of international research and global partnerships, roughly 70% of federal international funding is done through the Department of Defense. You can see, a number of the acronyms probably mean less internationally than they do even within Washington, D.C. But you'll see that the Department of Defense has a relatively sizable footprint relative to whether it's the Department of Homeland Security or National Science Foundation or NASA and such. Really, the focus is trying to engage cutting-edge researchers across the world and to work collaboratively with them, trying to sort of both attract and retain top talent internationally. Next slide, Lola. One of the things I also wanted to highlight was sort of differences in how the U.S. approaches funding and project selection relative to some of the U.S. agencies. We're sort of looking for sort of mission focused type activities. So, it could have very similar types of research interest, scientific interest as National Science Foundation, for example, or other partners, but really we're maybe focus it a bit more on sort of the use-inspired space of sort of a national security focus. We tend to have empower program managers a lot in using peer review as a tool rather than simply having peer review dominate the process. The program managers tend to have a lot more leeway to sort of think about and take a bit higher risk in supporting new and emerging fields that could have high potential, and so it does distinguish a bit and allows program managers to have autonomy to develop portfolios that ideally can be used to further advance. Next slide, Lola. All right, I will skip over this in the interest of time, but really what this is giving a sense of how we have tried to engage with this. Give it one case of engaging with a researcher sort of across the the trajectory of his career, very early to ongoing efforts, and how the impact of that early investment allowed us to develop some really important technical advances throughout the career. Next slide. Again, aware that I'm tight on time here, and I think we can probably skip over this. So here again is an area of how we roughly fund the sciences across the department, a number of initiatives, and you'll see on the right just sort of broken down by general areas. And then, you'll see here, which I'll just talk about in the next slide briefly, a small part of the life sciences, which we'll also talk about here. This gives early investment in Africa before 2022. Next slide. And here you see this sort of shifting in investments between before and after 2022. So relatively recently, you see that before 22, there was a larger investment in the life sciences. The investment continues in the life sciences now, but we've started to sort of expand the sciences in which we're trying to engage. And, clearly, Africa is an enormous continent, and there's still a great deal of gray areas within the picture on the right, but you're starting to see where we're trying to sort of expand those engagements and increase portfolio across both a number of the science areas that are of interest, but also geographic spaces in the continent. Next slide. All right. These are some folks who've sort of, I guess we would refer to them as success stories coming out of the U.S. Africa Frontiers. I won't have time to address those, but you see some of them, and we're expecting and hoping that you'll start to see many more of those. Next slide, Lola. All right. One of the things that I did want to touch on before time is sort of emphasizing that we see, within the office, we see science as a public good. And there's a strong effort within our office to try to support what we refer to as the global science commons, sort of openness, transparency, and merit-based competition, reciprocity. So really trying to facilitate partnerships across the scientific enterprise for the global good. And next slide. All right. We'll go back forward. Next slide. Okay. So with this, I wanted to sort of bring it to an end because, again, I was only supposed to speak 10 minutes, and I think I've already done longer than that. The representatives from the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy, you'll see links there. And I believe in the last slide, you'll see the names of some of the folks within the program officers within those services who will be talking to folks later today. I'm grateful for the opportunity at least to touch base and happy to re-engage as time allows. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, David. Yeah, so on this slide, you can see the different program officers that will that we can reach out to. We also have that resource page that should be among one of the materials that you should have um, a piece of. So next, we're going to move on to the presentation from the Tri-Service Program Officers. Can you let us know? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So I think you are going to pull it up.
I hope
And
everyone
actually,
can see.
yes, and actually, right before I go, I know David's about to hop off, but I didn't know if anybody had a quick general question. If you do, please write it in the chat, and we can come back to it later.
Yeah, happy
So,
to. I just don't want to get in the way of others.
okay. Thank you so much, David, for that wonderful overview of basic research. So now that you all had a general overview of basic research and what DoD does and why we do basic research and how we're very interested in developing true partnerships across the continent, we are now going to hand it over to the program officers on which we hope that you all can get connected to. So starting first up, do we have Laura to start talking, or who's going up first? Is
Me,
Air Force?
Jen.
Oh, it's you, Jen. Sorry.
No
That's
worries.
all. Okay. Hi, Jen. Welcome,
Hey.
Jen. And please give us a great introduction about about um, the tri services and your efforts and your interest in collaboration. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Dr. Jen Becker.
Great. Thank you, Lola. And thank you for joining us this afternoon and giving us the opportunity to talk to you about some of the opportunities that we have. David gave a great overview of why the DoD is interested in basic research and some of the high-level funding opportunities that we've pursued in the past. And what we're going to do is kind of break that down a little bit more and give you some details about specific basic research opportunities. So my name is Jen Becker. I'm with the U.S. Army DevCom Atlantic office located in London, and I'm here with some colleagues from the Navy and the Air Force. The first couple slides are going to be an overview of some of our programs and funding opportunities that are similar across all three services, Army, Navy, and Air Force. And then we will give you some specific examples or some more details on each individual service and talk about some of the differences. So why we do what we do, I think David gave you a great overview of this, and I'm not going to rehash it too much, other than to say we are interested in basic research. The DoD has a long history of funding basic research that leads to new knowledge and pushes scientific fields in new directions. So this is a slide from the Air Force, and we can see that basic science is really the root of every Department of Air Force capability and really all technological development. So we need this basic science foundation to feed into other programs. You may ask why are we interested in research outside the US? And that's pretty simple. 75% of the world's researchers are outside the US. We want to engage with the best researchers around the world. And to do that, we need to go out there and work with the best researchers and look at the rest of the world, not just in the US. Next slide, please. So our international offices for both for the Navy, Air Force, and Army all have similar programs and do similar things internationally. And we really put this into three different categories: awareness, engagement, and relationships. So, awareness of what each other is doing, right? We want to know about the great scientific advances that you are making and the new research that you're pursuing. But we also want you to know what we're interested in so we can hopefully find areas to collaborate and develop research together. Engagement. I personally feel this is really the foundation of scientific advancements. Innovation happens when you bring different groups of people together, when you're engaged with different groups. Often we see the biggest scientific advancements happen at the intersection of different scientific disciplines. We also see great scientific advances when you engage with people who think differently, have different experiences and different professional development opportunities. And so we're really looking to engage throughout the world and look at problems and answer scientific questions in different ways. And then finally, relationships. We want to build long-term relationships with researchers, again, throughout the world and really advance science together. Next slide, please. So how do we actually do this? We have basic research funding that we provide in the form mostly of grants around the world. So we have three categories of support. The first is research, which you may be most familiar with. These are traditional research grants. They vary in size, anywhere from about 25,000 to 150,000 US dollars a year, anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. And that can vary depending on the area of science. It can vary on the service that you're working with. You'll see in the block there under research, it says relevant to BAA technical focus areas. BAA stands for Broad Agency Announcement, and each of the services is going to provide you with more information on what that means and the specific technical areas that are of interest to them. We all also support travel grants. So this is our visiting scientist program. Some of us have different names for the programs, but they're essentially the same, where we can provide funding for international researchers to travel to the US, mainly to visit with DoD labs or centers, sometimes to conferences, really to build collaborative opportunities. And then we support conferences. Conferences are a great way to engage with the DoD and kind of dip your toe into DoD funding. Most of the time, we are interested in small scientifically focused conferences, smaller workshops, and seminars. We do support larger events, but we are really interested in bringing small groups of people together to talk about new scientific challenges that we are interested in pursuing. So this is a great way to get involved, either by participating or potentially helping to organize a small conference that the DoD is interested in. Again, Army, Navy, and Air Force all have similar programs. They sometimes have different names. The dollars amounts can vary a little bit, but they're all very similar. And what I also want to make sure that I mention before turning it over to my colleague is that while we have different technical areas that we may be interested in, there is a lot of overlap as well, and we all work together. So if you, for example, were interested in Army funding, I would engage with you on that, but I would also reach out to my Air Force and Navy colleagues, and we often co-fund and are interested in similar types of research. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague from the Air Force, Dr. Laura Steckman.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is great to see you. I think my camera is working. Yes. I'm going to assume it is. And so first of all, I wanted to say very quickly that because I saw this question in the in the Q&A is that when we talk about Department of Air Force, we are talking about both Air Force and Space Force, just to make that clear. But with that, I want to get you back into kind of talking about how you work with us. So what you see right here is kind of the full display of what our process is. Where we are right now is with initial contact. So all of you can say you have checked that box, you have started talking to us. And what we really want is to develop a longer term conversation with you. If you have great research ideas, we would also love to start talking about those with you directly and would ask for you to send a white paper. Generally, as you see here, those are 1 to 3 pages that just outline what your idea is, what the methodology is, and what the contribution to basic research is. And you would email it, and I believe our emails were in the last presentation, and we'll be able to get them after this webinar to you if you didn't copy them down. So if you send them to, for example, to the Air Force, we are going to look at it, but also then collaborate with our colleagues and share with the Army and the Navy to kind of talk about what might be in the realm of co-funding, or if there's a specific interest from one of the service to talk with you further about developing that idea. That's really the most important part of this slide right now for where we are. But just to kind of talk about timelines. So timelines definitely differ by what you send us. We wanted to look at it internally. We will talk to you. We will likely share that with other folks in our laboratories for that initial review stage. And that can be anywhere from, I guess, really fast. I've seen that go pretty quick to several months. So it really depends on what you're sending us. It depends on what time we are in our fiscal year, and so forth. Once you get past that initial review, and honestly, that's a conversation. I know I'm working with the Army and a researcher on the African continent right now, and we're really within a year of talking about this idea to really shape it. So it's really awesome. I'm very excited about it. I'm not going to talk about it right now. From there, once that you get past the initial review, you go to the full proposal. And I would recommend at that point, we can direct you to the right websites to do it, but kind of talking with us as to what that looks like and the rest of the process. But the full proposal then would take its time to go through its processes. That generally takes a couple of months. The acceptance then takes a little while to get onto an award document. So without spending too much time on this slide, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. I would really have you focus at this point on the white paper and communicating the great ideas that you have with us. Next slide, please. So I also saw a lot of these in the Q&A so far. So we wanted to tell you, so one of the questions we get most frequently is who retains the IP rights? And that is you as the researcher and or your university, depending on what your agreement with the university is. So we do not retain those intellectual property rights, you do. And we would also want you to identify as we're working together and having this conversation, especially once we've got an idea that's going to full proposal, any sensitive or intellectual property restrictions that you have within your idea. So what does the U.S. government, or in this case, the Department of Defense, get from your research? And I think this is a really important question. We do get government purpose rights, which are non-exclusive and non-commercial use of the intellectual property in your grant. We do get international research collaboration. So many of us, so I am a program officer based in Arlington, Virginia, and every year I bring all the researchers in the program together, and we are required to do this so that they can present their research to other researchers and stakeholders and make sure that they're really talking about and doing the best work that they can, learning from one another, and then of course being able to talk about the research with people who are really focused on these areas. So we get international research collaboration, which is one of the important pieces and effects that comes out of basic research. And of course, part of this entire webinar right now and our participation at Frontiers is about building new relationships. The relationships, as you saw, as Dr. Becker showed you on one of the previous slides, the engagement piece is really important for us. And you'll see a slide a little bit later, I won't spoil it, that talks about why we want to do this as well. So we want to work with top researchers in key areas that support the areas that we have identified as research interests. And then can the results be published? Absolutely. We want you to publish. We want you to present at conferences. We essentially, if you will excuse the American saying, we want to be able to scream from the rooftops that you did really great work, and so that we can talk about it once it's published and share it with people who are of interest oftentimes it will go on our social media channels so that you reach a wider audience. So yes, we want you to publish, we want you to talk about your research. And yes, oftentimes we will have research that aligns with in the Air Force, it's the technical directorates or other parts of the different service research laboratories. And we may have people who want to collaborate with you. We often do. And so we would want to connect them with you to potentially help with your research, maybe leverage, maybe give you things to enhance your research. And what I mean by that is some of the outputs or results of their own research in similar spaces. And then they can collaborate with you. So we want to learn from you. We want to work with you and thus engage with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Iyer. Oh, I'm sorry. Back to you, Jen. I got the order wrong.
No problem. So thanks, Laura. That kind of summarizes all of our programs, Army, Navy, and Air Force. And now we're going to talk about some of the differences. So we have a lot of similarities, but we also have a lot of differences. I do believe these slides will be available or will be sent out to all the attendees. So you will have all of the links to everything and everyone's email address. So for the Army, again, my name is Jen Becker. My colleague is Dr. Jonathan Brame. Our email addresses are here. There's also this us.army.grants@army.mil email address. If you have any questions or want to send us a white paper, feel free to reach out to any of these email addresses. Next slide, please. So I've seen several questions in the Q&A about areas of research that are of interest. For the Army, it is very broad, and I think you'll see the same thing for both the Navy and the Air Force as well. So we list some areas of interest here, not to get into any detail, but just to show you the breadth of the different areas. Biology, chemistry, data sciences, social sciences, network sciences, physics, math. It is quite broad. Where you'll go to get some more details and specific information on what types of chemistry, for example, is on the next slide, please. So this is really the take-home slide for the Army. I mentioned when I talked about research grants that they need to be relevant to the BAAs or the broad agency announcements. And here's the link for the Army Research Laboratory broad agency announcement. So if you go to the website here, and again, you'll have the link on this slide, you will see the Army Broad Agency announcement. If you go to collaborate with us, you'll have the Army Broad Agency announcement. And if you click on that, you can then search, you can filter, you can type in keywords and find different topics within that broad agency announcement where your research may fit. The search function can be a little clunky sometimes, so it doesn't always work. So if you have a research idea and you're not finding a topic where you think your research would fit, I would still encourage you to reach out to us because there may be some other places that we know about and we can help you make connections. But this is really where you will go to find specific topics that the Army is interested in funding basic research. We talked about this a little bit in some of the other slides, but I just want to stress that we are interested in high risk, potential for high reward basic research. And I would encourage you when you're submitting a white paper or reaching out to ask us about opportunities and talking about what your ideas are, that you make sure you include what is a scientific question and your hypothesis, very briefly how you would address that and how your approach is novel, or how you are uniquely qualified to address the scientific question. And that will help us find the right place and hopefully generate a lot of interest for your research. I think that's the last slide I have, and I will turn it over to my colleague in the Navy, I believe. Next slide. Yes, over to you, Mamadou.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mamadou Jallo, and I'm a science director for ONR Global. So ONR is part of the U.S. Navy, so I represent the U.S. Navy. So I see that we have currently 321 people attending. When I say this is really great, this is fantastic. And it's really exactly the kind of activity we as a DoD organization would like to be able to interact with the scientific community in Africa. So I'm going to go talk a little bit also about our differences. I think my colleague already laid out how we go about creating collaboration with scientists around the world, including Africa. So can you please go to the next slide? Okay, so for the US Navy, so we, like I mentioned, our office is called ONR, Office of Naval Research. And ONR is responsible for defining all the program for the US Navy, in particular when in basic and applied science. So they fund ONR fund project in the US. So in addition to ONR, now we have ONR Global. Global means outside of the US, that fund the project outside of the US. That's what my colleagues just described. So but ONR Global is a little bit larger. So we do have a different department, but the specific one for international science, we have about, currently I think we have 24 different science directors that are placed around the world to engage with scientists and be able to create collaborations. So those 24 science directors are all focusing on part of the list I'm showing here. So what you see here is a list of the different departments of ONR. So if you take first, for example, the first one is power, energy, and logistics. The next one is cyber and cyber and information is cyber. So I think, I don't know why I remove the context. Typically, what I want to say is information, cyber, and spectrum superiority. So those, for instance, that's the second department. We have another department called human performance and so on. So this is the really high level of what the different departments we have within ONR that we are interested in funding projects. So in particular, for myself, I'm working for the information cyber and spectrum superiority. That's my area. That's the one I'm supporting. And we have other science directors supporting the remaining different areas in these 5 different departments. So currently, I'm the one who is assigned to support the activities in Africa. But all our science directors, they can go to Africa. They can actually go there and fund the project. So all 24 can go to Africa, engage with scientists in Africa, and be able to fund the project in Africa. So in the next slide, we're just going to look at some of the examples of projects we have already funded in Africa. So my colleague did mention that we have 3 different types of funding. So the first one is grant. The second one is a grant for a project. The second one is grant for conferences and workshop. The third one is grant for traveling to the US to meet with scientists in the US. So each of those 3 categories, I'm going to give you at least one example of project that ONR Global have funded, sometime in collaboration with the US Army or the US Air Force. So what you see here are the 3 different projects. The first one is in Botswana, that was funded to the University of Botswana International University of Science and Technology. This project focuses in deploying a manned system or drones to an area to collect data. So this data will be to interpret this data to identify activities around that area. It can be animals, can be people. So this is really at the behind the project is really artificial intelligence. They're going to use, collect data, process the data, and try to figure out if the activity that they see is really from an animal, is from people, and so on. So that's a specific project that was funded in Botswana. It's a collaboration between the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Army. The next one is in the Gambia. This one is another project that tried to use artificial intelligence to be able to study the variation of the Gambia River. So they have various sensors that they put into the river, so they can collect the data. They collect, for instance, video data, sound data, and so on. So they use that to understand, for instance, climate change and so on. The last one here was funded in Ghana. This is at the University of Kwame Nkrumah. So this one also focusing on understanding the coastal erosion. So again, they're going to use machine learning or artificial intelligence to understand how the degradation is happening into the coastal of Ghana. So this is just to show you examples of projects we already have funded, and just to highlight that really Africa, we do have unique opportunities for project. We have unique opportunities for conducting science and technology that are of interest to the rest of the world. So let's go to the next slide. This is the second type of funding. This is for funding conferences and workshops. So U.S Global, again, in collaboration with sometimes the U.S. Army or the U.S. Air Force, we have been funding conferences in Africa recently. So one of the projects conference we funded was in Kenya. This is focusing on material science. The second one is in Uganda. This is, some of you may know about those conferences. This one focusing on synthetic biology. And the last one also was funded in Cameroon. So this one also focusing on biodiversity. So all these conferences are all large conferences bring scientists all over the world to meet in Africa in these specific countries to actually hold those conferences. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the third type of funding. So this is funding scientists to go from Africa or from all over the world to go to the US. For us, for the Navy, when I say you go to a Navy lab or go to a Navy lab and also visit universities around in the US. So this is a scientist from Benin who was funded to go to the US and participate with those 2 events. So the quote you hear, this is what he wrote after attending this event, how happy he was, how excited, how interesting the trip was. So this is another type of funding that we provide. So just to recall quickly, we fund the project, we fund the conferences and workshop, and also we fund trips, what we call visiting scientist program. We fund also trip to go to the US to collaborate or to meet with scientists to define a common interest for a project. So let's go to the next slide. So okay, yeah, you can see us on YouTube and social media. So if you have any question, so I didn't put the email here. I realized that my email not there, but I will add the email into the slide that will be shared with everyone. So if anything you wanna talk about, yeah, please contact me. I think back to you, Jennifer. I think
Oh,
this was the
I think
last.
it's back to me. Hello. I think it's back to me. We have, I guess we have a lot of questions and just about a few minutes for question and answer. So I'm gonna go through some of the questions. I think any one of the panelists, you, Mamadou, Jennifer, could answer. So one of the questions is, hello?
Well, quickly, maybe you can finish up the slide first, maybe, and then maybe go through the questions.
Oh, there's still more slides?
Yes, more slides.
Oh, sorry. Laura and Nadini. Laura is, I'm sorry. I thought that the slides are finished. Do you want to go ahead?
No worries. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Iyer.
Hello. Yeah, if you can go on to the next slide. Laura, you've seen Laura before. I am actually located in our London office. I just wanted to give you, similar to what the Army and Navy described, these are our areas that we are currently funding. We have anywhere from 36 to 40 different areas that we are funding currently, and you'll see the names of all of these. And these are further, you can get further information about all of these areas in our broad agency announcement that's coming up. The link is coming up. I just also wanted to mention that we have about 5 offices worldwide, including our main office, which is the European Office of Aerospace Research and Development. That's in London. Next slide, please. And similar to the Army and the Navy, we fund basic research. These are basic principles. So we are interested in the knowledge.
Lola, I think Nandini is disconnected.
Yeah, I think so. Laura, do you want to hop in really quick as we get Nandini back?
Yeah, sure. As Nandini's coming back. So just let me know when she's back. So what we do is we classify research into different, what you see here, TRLs, or technology readiness levels. So just to make sure that we're a little bit clearer on what we mean by basic research, we are interested in TRL 1, the basic principles observed and recorded in different areas of science, and TRL 2, a technology concept and or application that is being formulated through the research. We're also interested in completely brand new ideas that might open new doors to science. Some of our colleagues are able to go above this. As you can see, there are different levels up until 9. However, if you have questions about those, you should reach out and ask us, and we might be able to find an opportunity that you could explore. We are just specifically talking about the TRLs 1 and 2. And next slide, I think. Dr. Iyer, are you back?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, awesome. Turning it over to you.
So this is, again, like the Army and the Navy, we have a broad agency announcement. You can go to the same website, grants.gov, and type in our broad agency opportunity number, and that should give you information about the research areas that we are interested in and details about each of the 36 different research areas we fund. Next slide, please. And since we have a whole group of scientists here, I would just like to wrap up by talking about the scientific impact of multinational collaboration. We all come from different regions of the world. We all have special expertise that we possess in these different areas of the world. Sometimes the geography lends itself to working on unique research problems. So on the left, you will see the slide that was actually put forth about 4 years ago right now, that looked at the relationship of multinational collaboration and scientific impact. So citations, directly correlated to citations. The blue bar that you see with the number 27 on there shows how many highly cited publications resulted from US universities being funded all by itself. So there's no collaboration involved, although it did involve universities within the US. So if you have a PI, say, located in South Carolina, collaborating with another PI in Washington, D.C., but they are all located within the US, they roughly resulted in about 27 impactful citations. Um, the orange bar shows where there was the US partnering with one additional country. So these are impactful collaborations that result from partnership of two countries. And you can see there's a slight increase in the number of highly cited publications. The green bar shows the same, but now you have three countries collaborating, so the US and two other countries. And the light blue bar at the very end shows the number of publications that result as a function of four countries collaborating. So the US, along with three other international countries. As you can see, this directly shows an increase in scientific impact as measured by citations, and the number of highly impacted publications that come out of these um, collaborations. We did the same thing on the right, but we looked only at AFOSAR publications. And in fact, what you can see from all these bars is that even when you normalize it, and this is normalized now by the field citation ratio, so each field has a slightly different impact on the citations. And if you normalize it, AFOSR actually has a larger impact that they show for multinational collaborations. And I will point out that these are not just, you don't get this impact just because the authors are citing each other. So these were even normalized for self-citations, and the impact still persists, which goes to show that collaborations, when you have international collaborations across international borders, it is directly correlated to scientific impact. And this is why, again, is one of the reasons that we invest in multinational collaborations across our borders, across US borders. Next slide, please. I just wanted to start off and end by saying that let's carry on the conversation at DoD Collaboration Day. If you guys are coming to Kigali, we can go. We have a special session that is scheduled in the afternoon of February 20th, which is the DoD Collaboration Day. We will all be there. We can answer any additional questions you might have. Stop by, say hi to us. Let's carry on the conversation. Let's discuss all those brilliant ideas that you have. Let's talk about your white papers that you'll submit to us, and take the conversation further. And I just wanted to end finally, but next slide, with this wonderful quote that I always like from Louis Pasteur. Science doesn't belong to a country, it belongs to all of humanity, and therefore we all need to engage in the scientific ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandini. That was an excellent quote to end off this. Your presentations were all very wonderful. So we don't have that much time left. So I wanted to know, maybe we can answer just maybe one or two questions from the chat. I think one of the questions that that we keep seeing over and over is, do researchers have to collaborate with a USPI in order for them to be able to be funded?
I think the answer is no. We don't need any kind of US collaboration in order for you guys to get funded.
Thank you. And then we will continue to answer questions within the chat. I mean, we'll. So if you have any other questions, please continue to do the chat. we are all working through them one by one. So, but we will promise to get to all of your questions. So, moving on, we're going to turn on to another exciting discussion featuring researchers who've been successfully secured DoD funding. These panelists will share their experiences from navigating the application process to the impact of their research. So each panelist will begin with a very brief introduction of their work, and then we will dive into a moderate discussion where we'll explore their challenges, successes, and future opportunities for collaboration. So first up, we have Dr. Bala Diop. Please, can you give for 1 to 2 minutes, just introduce yourself and talk about the research that you do? Hello, Bala, are you on? Okay, let's move to Dr. Sam Chikome from Botswana, who specializes in material science research. Are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, hi, Sam Chikome. Looks like we're seeing your screen. Please give us a quick overview of you and the work that you do.
Okay, thank you, Lola, and thank you, everyone. I think I'll just give a quick overview in the few minutes that I've been given. So the first thing is that I'm based in Botswana at the Botswana Institute for Technology Research and Innovation. This is government-funded primarily, a national lab in Botswana. I'm involved in materials research. So in terms of my contribution, there's experimental work where I work as a senior researcher in nanomaterials. But then our institution also happens to be the host for the headquarters of the African Materials Research Society. I think I've been responsible for the secretariat office for about 8 years now. So they were also involved in promoting excellence in all aspects of materials research. So from there, we provide a platform of ensuring that there is a communication. I think looking at the whole continent to ensure that people get to know each other in terms of materials research. So that's what I'm also involved in. That's why you would see that the two logos there. But then in terms of the work that I do, because of my employer at Petrie, there is a strong focus on how to be able to use material science to convert locally available materials into advanced materials for different applications. So I just put a general slide here to just show you the general materials that I work with, cellulose-based materials, carbon-based materials, and also ceramics-based materials that we derive from the natural resources that we have in Botswana. So in terms of the sort of work that we do, I'm primarily mandated to focus on developing materials for water purification. But then I think what I do is that because we also connect with local universities like University of Botswana, Botswana International University of Science and Technology, and also some other universities that are within Africa, we're also able to do some maybe fundamental experiments that are still linked to these materials that we work with. But for the focus at my institution, what is expected is that we work in an area of material development that shows a pathway towards the ability to be able to scale up, the ability to be able to eventually develop a pilot scale systems that are applicable. So, for example, in this slide, it's a project that I've been working on where we are looking at how to derive a granular filter media that can be used at a pilot scale for water purification. So this just shows you the process, which is basically an extrusion and sterilization process to develop the granular filter media of a whole range of materials. We then introduce them into the pilot scale system and eventually have our mobile pilot scale water purification system that is solar driven. And then I think the last part that I want to just talk about is the general area of electrospinning, where we look at developing the nanofiber-based materials. So we at my institution we have facilities that allow us to be able to perform these experiments at the lab scale, pilot scale, and now we're moving towards being able to go on the production scale. So with these facilities, we're able to perform a lot of spinning without any limitations. So a whole range of applications through collaboration. But for me, primarily, I look at membranes for water purification, but we're also doing some other work through collaborative work that we do. So I think in summary, I can broadly say that this is my involvement in terms of materials science related work that I'm doing at between Botswana. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent overview of your work. Next, we want to move on to Henry Martin to give a quick overview of what he's doing. Please limit it to about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes if you can, to just give a quick overview of your work and how you got involved with DoD. Thank you, Henry.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. I'm Henry Martin, and I'm from Ghana, specifically Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. I'm a computational physicist at the Department of Physics, and so my expertise has to do with modeling and simulation of materials. And in this context, we look at quantum, we're looking at molecular dynamics. That is, we also looked at some aspects in continuum modeling. And so in materials, this is what we do. And for some time now in Ghana, we have also been trying to put together quantum science and technology. This, under the Department of Physics, is in the Mathematical and Computational Physics unit. And so for some time now, we've been organizing some workshop and seminars to get the revolution of quantum science and technology. We had our e-learning African International School of Quantum Science and Technology last year from June. We just ended it in early this February, and we awarded a certificate. We got in touch with the DoD funding after the program officers visited Ghana, KNUST, to discuss with us the funding opportunities that DoD have. That was last year in September, in the course of our quantum science and technology outreach that we are having. And so we are very glad and happy that we got to know about the funding, and we had some discussion in order for us to have a conference, because we have a roadmap on quantum science and technology for Africa. It is our belief that we have to work together as a continent, that is African continent, to join this initiative of quantum science and technology, so that Africa can also benefit in due time. So we are very glad to be part of this U.S. African transnational collaboration to widen the scope and get Africa part of this revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Henry, for that really great introduction into the work that you do. I'm going to ask you a quick question before I move to our next panelist. And that quick question is how did you first learn about DoD opportunities and what motivated you to apply?
Okay, thank you very much, Lola. And so we first got in touch with DoD, as I said, when the program officers from the U.S. Air Force visited Ghana in September 2024 and interacted with us, that's myself and the department, about the funding opportunities. For us, our motivation in having to apply is was really centered on the quantum science and technology. It is our view that if we had to get the roadmap for Africa and bring Africa together in joining this initiative of quantum revolution, we need some funding, we need some expertise to come together, and then we can be able to see this future come to light. And that is our motivation for having to apply for the funding.
Thank you so much. That's a very great answer. So what you're saying is that it was through a site visit and making that connection and reaching out to program officers. That's great to know. Okay, so we have two more panelists that we want to join. The next one I'm going to go to see if Bala is available to hop in.
Yes, Lola.
Bala,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Bala. Okay, yes. Can you give us like a 2-minute introduction of yourself
Okay.
and your research?
Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, but we'll probably only have time to see about 2 slides. And can you
okay, just gonna be one slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Professor Bale Jongom from the University Cheikh Anta Diop of Dakar in Senegal. Thank you very much for inviting us into this interesting panel exchange. So my work is mainly built on energy storage, such as supercapacitors and battery. I'll also look into electrocatalysis, so photocatalysis, or material. Also looking into all these biomass derived different type of material. So basically, my work is just on trying to look at in which way are we going to the residual agricultures that we have through the continent, how we turn this into advanced nanomaterial that are going to be used in different type of application. And this is basically the work that I have been doing the last 4 years. And I get in touch with the DoD after knowing all this, having information around this since to 2017 after funding that we get from them to support the African American Research Conference held in Botswana. And after that, I had the chance to also to be supported and to attend the first U.S. Africa Frontier meeting, which was held at the African Academy of Science in Kenya. And from there, I received also some of directors, Mamadou and Arturo from the headquarters that's it in Brazil, who visited me in last year, March, and this get into a grant that have been funded from. And I received also a grant from the U.S. funding or mobility. I received a colleague from Texas University, Professor Jire, who came to my lab for 1 month, and we had a chance to collaborate, and we have a paper on pipeline. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent overview of your work. Before I go to the next panelist, I want to ask you a question. What was the most challenging part of your application process, and how did you overcome it?
So the most part of the challenging was how it's not obviously on the science aspect, because we went through the white paper back and forth with the science director till we get exactly what we want. But the most challenging is just to get my proposal into the website, into the grantgov.com. And this was related to our admin locally, in which we did not have some registration that have expired, and that was not really linked to the to Department or NRG or DoD side. It was linked to our side, and we managed to use another DoD from the same university.
Thank you so much. So a lot of the challenge was logistically, or trying to work through the grant process. So yeah, that is a sometimes very complicated for first time grantees to understand. So thank you for bringing that up, so that other prospective applicants can understand that this may be a big challenge for them as they're trying to go through the process. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over. We're going to come back to you, but we're going to turn it over to the next panelist to introduce yourself, Dr. Fabian Azima. Can you please give us like a 2-minute overview of yourself and talk about why you got connected, how you got connected with DoD?
Hello, Lola.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. I'm Professor Fabian Ezema from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. My research basically is based on thin films, nanomaterials, material synthesis. We work on solar cells, and we also try to look at perovskite solar cell. We also try to look at Dyson-style solar cell. Of recent, we're working on large scale materials, and that led us to getting the grant from U.S. Army. That was to look at water and its purification, because in the Niger Delta of Nigeria, there has been a serious problem, serious challenge of pollution around the Delta region, oil pollution in particular. So in order to clean the environment, the government has been pumping money into it to politicians, and yet no result. So we decided to see if from basic science, we'll be able to look at how we can clean the environment, the oil, with nanomaterials. And that is what we have been doing for the past 6 months or thereabout, trying to look at materials that will be able to degrade the oil in the environment, and then try to see if it's possible to reclaim the water for the people around the region. And that is the work we are doing at the moment. So in this type of material, what we try to look at is to see if it is possible to enhance the photocatalytic efficiency of the materials which we are interested in. We also try to see if we can improve the stability and reusability of the material that is involved. We try to also look at the possibility of tuning the band gap of the material, because TiO2 is basically in the UV. So we try to develop a composite that can actually try to absorb wavelength all through the wavelength, but trying to move into the visible and near infrared to see if we can get better photocatalytic activity. So from there, we also try to look at the possibility of using a green synthesis. So we try to use the soil gel method. We also try to use the green synthesis method, from which we think that if we use natural material around us and we're able to extract the active ingredient, we can actually purify the material and then use it to do a nice purification of the environment. So we use different methods in doing this. We use hydrothermal, we use something like chemical bath method and so on to do this. So I got in touch first with DoD in 2011 at Zimbabwe Africa Material Conference. After their presentation, I approached them requesting for opportunity to see if there is a funding that can be given to me. At the moment, I have nothing in my lab. So I was requested to submit some white paper. I submitted because I am interested in getting a funding. I submitted 2 at once, and the 2 white papers were looked at, and then funding was given to me. After about 3 years of doing the research, I completed the project, then got back again in touch with them in 2011. And that time they attended 2021 rather, after the COVID, where they attended our conference virtually, African, we call it That was the third African materials, nanomaterials application in health and so on and so on. So after attending the virtual conference, they supported us in the conference, and 2023, they also supported us in the conference. And then while they were there in 2023 virtually, we requested that we submit another white paper, which we did. And it took about 3 years for the approval, about 3 or 2 years rather, for the approval, because we have to go through a rigorous review before it came to where they wanted. And then that is what we are now doing. We are happy that U.S. Army and DoD is doing a lot to keep Africa online in terms of research and in advanced research. We're interested in doing so many other things. And then maybe we'll discuss this when we come for on-site discussion. And I want to say I'm grateful to all of you for granting us opportunity in Africa to have a view of what should be done in research. Because African government, we all know, is not making any effort. If you ask all of us who are part of this, you will know that the government contributes minimally, sometimes nothing, to see that research is advanced in Africa. Thank you very much. Hello?
Thank you. I think Lola got disconnected.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Fabian. I'm jumping in here because she's connecting back. But I wanted to see if any of our colleagues in the Department of Defense would like to add anything while waiting for Lola to come.
Yeah, I want to say if they have questions, or maybe we can look at the questions that are on the chat, and we try maybe to answer those questions.
Yes, I think we are going through them, and a few other colleagues from DoD are also answering them. Most of the questions have to do with the process, in the sense whether it's a deadline or it's a rolling application, whether it's solicitation specific, and I think there is also some questions about who should be the lead, whether it's the U.S. or the African researcher. So I know that each agency has different requirements. Mamadou, perhaps you can start first with ONRG. My understanding is that your funds can only go to non-U.S. institutions. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So for ONR Global, we part of the US Navy. So we fund only institutions that are not part of the government. But also we fund only outside of the US. So if you are, let's say, in Nigeria or you are in Senegal, you apply, that we will be able to fund you. But if someone in the US, University in the US, apply to us, we will not be able to fund them.
Right.
So our funding is only
ONRG, and that's only for ONRG,
yes,
but then it does not apply to
ONRG.
the other agencies that have spoken earlier. Then the other ones have
Yes.
flexibilities to fund both US and African researchers alike. So just to note this difference between ONRG and other agencies, but Air Force and the Army can support both US and African researchers. And for the deadline, there is it's on a rolling basis, correct?
Yes, there is no deadline. So we have a fiscal year, it starts October 1st, and then all the way to September 20th, that's a fiscal year. So it's a rolling kind of application. You can apply anytime. But typically what we say to potential PI is to apply early.
Yeah, okay. And what are the best practices? This is a question to all of the program officers who talked here. What are the best practices for engaging with program officers? Because based on the testimonials, it sounds like, a site visit triggers that relationship, or coming to the Frontier Symposium or to the DoD. Can you please share some tips or lessons learned on how to best engage with you and follow up with you? Thanks.
Yeah, so I can jump in on that.
Yes.
I would recommend taking a look at the broad agency announcements for all the services. So the links for those will be provided in the slides that are going to be going out to all participants. So please take a look at the broad agency announcements. And then reach out to one of us. You'll have all of our email addresses on all of us that are on this call today and attending the Frontiers conference. You'll have a way to contact us. So feel free to reach out and contact us. All we need to start with is just a paragraph or two on, what is your scientific question that you're trying to address? How is your approach unique? And from that, we will work with the subject matter experts in our labs and centers because we're only a handful of people. We don't have expertise in all of the different scientific areas that we're interested in, but we'll work with the experts in our labs to review that and start to engage in conversation. It may require several iterations of that white paper that, like we heard about earlier today. But really reaching out and contacting one of us is the best way. And I know there were some questions about, I sent an inquiry and I haven't had a response. Feel free to send us an email again. Sometimes it takes us a couple weeks to find the right subject matter experts. Sometimes we're traveling and it's hard for us to respond to emails right away. But you can always send me a reminder. I like that. And we will definitely get back to you. So I guess those are my suggestions.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I see Lola is back, so I'll hand her back the mic.
Thank you so much for helping me take the wheel. Sorry about that. I got disconnected, but I reconnected. Okay, so let's continue with some of these questions. One of the questions I'm seeing is, I see that most of the incumbent awardees and collaborators are from academia. Does DoD fund or collaborate with researchers in the private for-profit institutions?
Yes, we do collaborate with private companies, in particular smaller company that focus on R&D. So again, what we can fund are basic science. So if the company is working on basic science, something interesting, there is the opportunity there. Back to you, Lola.
Thank you. So I guess this question is for the panelists that are the previously funded researchers, but you all can join in, the program officers. So how do you manage expectations when working with DoD funded projects, particularly in terms of timelines, deliverables? What advice do you have for first time applicants in managing expectations? So for a program officer's point of view, what do you all expect from the researchers that you fund? What type of deliverables do you expect? And can you give any advice on that? If I was to be funded by you, what are your expectations? And do you all own the IP, or am I allowed to apply for a patent? Can you give us feedback on any of that?
Maybe one of the panelists, maybe to give their experience.
I can go.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think for me, what I've experienced is that it is very important from the proposal stage to fully understand the process that is involved. For example, when you are looking at how you develop your budget, and also when you also look at the whole process of how you then submit the reports in the subsequent stages. So you find that when you are submitting your application and I'll give an example of maybe, I think my first proposal, which was 2019, there was a conference grant. So I remember when we were submitting the proposal, there was a part where when I was talking to the program officer, even before submitting the application, there was a part where we had to specify the end date of the project. At the time, I didn't fully understand, but later when I realized that what it meant was that the subsequent stages of submitting proposals will need to be accommodated. So you find that if you give a timeline that is too short without discussing with the program officer, you find that you may not have enough time to be able to gather all the necessary information that is required. For example, like when you write your proposal, if you maybe include things like you'll if a group of people are funded for a conference and you incorporate things like a publication of conference proceedings. So you find that if you don't factor in the fact that the papers need to go for peer review, they will need to be published, and then you can submit everything so they can complete in line with the proposal. You find that you may not be able to meet the expectations of the program officers, which can sort of suppress your chances of getting funding in future. So I think that part is critical, where you ensure that you work with the program officer and fully understand the whole process up to project end. So at least you can ensure that everything is perfectly in line, because it's very important to ensure that you try by all means to be in line without a propose. But for me, I think what I always try to do is to sort of deliver more than what will be in the proposal. For example, like the things like when you apply for funding, you find that in some cases it's partial funding. But then if you're also able to get additional funding from other sources to sort of supplement that, that's something that typically they require. So it's something that is also encouraged. So in a way, it comes out as seed funding, but it helps to expand, but still within the same framework of the priority areas of DoD. So that if the objective is to enhance collaboration, then you show that it actually really comes out like that. So I think for me, that what I've experienced with all the funding that I've been getting from the DoD. Thank you.
So may I add just some 2 words? On my experience when I was writing my white paper is that we need to be very, very specific on the science that we are proposing. And I could say that it doesn't need to be really, really something that have been done or something that you have a big literature around it. It just need to be something new and specific on the area, because I could see that the DoD has very specific area in which they fund. They don't fund broad science just like this, just a specific area. And you need to really focus on those areas before submitting your proposal. So this is one of the experience that I had when I was writing my white paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mamadou, did you want to add anything before I move to the next question?
Yeah, I think Samuel and Bala did kind of summarize all the main big challenges we do encounter when working with PI in general. Is really being able to communicate with the science director for us, for INA Global, or the program officer, to make sure that you understand what is the expectation, what do you, when you write, what actually they looking for. So you cannot do general, you have to be very specific, you have to be really detailed, it has to be, you have to push the science somehow. So that's one side. And then also for the process, typically you have to start early, because toward the end, you may really get at a point where you have to go fix your proposal. Sometimes you can run out of time. If you run out of time, let's say for a conference, then you may not get funded. If it's a proposal for a project, it's fine, but it's a conference, you may not get funded. So it's why you need to really communicate early on to your point of contact.
Okay, we only have 1 minute left, and there's this one area that I really wanted to ask the program officers about, because I know a lot of researchers are talking about different topics that they're interested in, and they are not able to directly see how it's relevant to DoD, such as environmental toxicology or pollution management. So the question is, are you able to balance? How can researchers balance their fundamental research interests and align them with what DoD's research are, and how like, does it just start with the conversation and program officers working back and forth, but how is that able to happen, where you may start off with a research area that is not maybe so relevant, but identify areas of relevance between DoD?
Yeah, so I think it definitely starts with the program officer and having that conversation. And it really comes down to, what is the fundamental science question that you are trying to address? So not the application, but what is the science question? So I've seen some questions in the Q&A about pharmaceutical development and drug development. That's not something that we fund in our basic research programs. But understanding biochemical pathways, understanding interactions of chemicals on enzymes or proteins, things like that might be basic research questions that would be more relevant. So really think about, what is the fundamental science question that you're trying to answer, and then we can help determine which programs that may be relevant for in the Army, Navy, or Air Force.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. We actually have to come to the close of this session, but I do want to remind you all that there is a survey. In the survey, you can also put in questions or any particular speaker that you'll like to hear more from, and you can get connected to them through the survey. So please take a moment to fill out the survey. It's only about 5 to 6 questions, and besides your name and your institution, there we're able to capture your responses and hear more about whether or not, how you guys felt about this and how we can improve this session to make it much better. So I just want to come to a close. I want to take a moment for us to just reflect on some of the key takeaways that our program officers and our previously funded DoD researchers have said. We've heard some valuable insights from the Basic Research Office, from our valuable insights from our service branches, and you all were able to engage with researchers who are currently been funded by DoD, are making significant contributions to science and technology on the continent. So this is just the beginning of a broader dialogue, and we encourage you to continue exploring ways to collaborate and engage with DoD basic research programs. So I will come to the close of this session, but please, as I mentioned earlier, please take the time to fill out the survey so that we can connect you all with different program officers or the researchers on here that talked, and also learn more about how to improve this and better engage with you all in the future. So thank you all. So with that, I don't know if there's any other final thoughts, but I will bring this session to an end.